Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be reading the story of Jonah and the whale, which is probably one you're familiar with, I'm sure. Now, like last week's story, today's Bible story is about a call from God. But the response in today's story is quite different from that of Samuel. You remember that last week when we talked about Samuel's call to God, he was immediately responded very favorably once he figured out that it was God that was talking to him. But the person we're going to be reading about today, Jonah, he didn't understand why God wanted him to do what he was called to do. He thought it was a useless task. Right from the start, Samuel said yes to God. But Jonah's first response initially was no. And we will hear all about the consequences. Now, this is a very familiar, well-known story. And so because of that, there's some really nice artwork and illustrations of Jonah and the whale or Jonah and the fish. Sometimes the translation you use. Sometimes it's a giant fish. Sometimes it's a whale. So I'm going to show you as I read the story. I'm going to have some of that artwork running in the background for a change of pace of my face, stare at my face. So let me get that going. The Lord's word came to Jonah. Get up and go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their evil has come to my attention. So Jonah got up to flee from Tarshish from the Lord. He went down and he found a ship headed for Tarshish. He paid the fare and went aboard, go with them away from the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, so that there was a great storm on the sea. The ship looked like it might be broken to pieces. The sailors were terrified. Each one cried out to his God. They hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to make it lighter. Now Jonah had gone down into the hold of the vessel to lie down, and was deep in sleep. The ship's officer came and said to him, "How can you possibly be sleeping so deeply? Get up, call on your God. Perhaps the God will give some thought to us so that we won't perish." Meanwhile, the sailors said to each other, "Come on, let's cast lots so that we might learn who is to blame for this evil that's happening to us." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they said to him, "Tell us, since you're the cause of this evil happening to us, what do you do and where are you from? What's your country and what people are you?" He said to them, "I am a Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." The men were terrified and said to him, "What have you done?" The men knew that Jonah was fleeing from the Lord because he had told them. They said to him, "What will we do about you so that the sea will become calm around us?" He said to them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm around you. I know it's my fault that this great storm has come upon you." The men rowed to reach dry land, but they couldn't manage it because the sea continued to rage against them. So they called on the Lord, saying, "Please, Lord, don't let us perish on account of this man's life, and don't blame us for innocent blood. You are the Lord. Whatever you want, we can do." Then they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased its raging. The men worshiped the Lord with a profound reverence. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made solemn promises. Meanwhile, the Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. "I call out to the Lord in my distress, and he answered me. In the belly of the wonder world, I cried out for help. You have heard my voice. You had cast me into the depths, in the heart of the sea, and the floods surrounded me. All your strong waves and rushing water passed over me. So I said, I must have been driven away from your sight. Will I ever again look on your holy temple? Waters have grasped me to the point of death. The deep surrounds me. Seaweed is wrapped around my head. At the base of the undersea mountains, I have sunk down to the underworld. Its bars held me with no end in sight. But you brought me out of the pit. When my endurance was weakening, I remembered the Lord and my prayer, it came to you. to your holy temple. Those deceived by worthless things lose their chance for mercy. But me, I will offer a sacrifice to you with a voice of thanks. That which I have promised, I will pay. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. And then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto the dry land. The Lord's word came to Jonah a second time. Get up and go to Nineveh, that great city, and declare against it the proclamation that I am commanding you. And Jonah got up and went to Nineveh according to the Lord's word. Jonah started into the city, walking one day, and he cried out, just 40 days more, and Nineveh will be overthrown. And the people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast and put on mourning clothes, from the greatest of them to the least significant. When word of it reached the king of Nineveh, he got up from his throne, stripped himself of his robe, covered himself with mourning clothes, and sat in ashes. Then he announced, in Nineveh, by decree of the king and his officials, neither human nor animal, cattle nor flock will taste anything, no grazing and no drinking water. Let humans and animals alike put on mourning clothes and let them call upon God forcefully, and let all persons stop their evil behavior and the violence that's under their control. He thought, who knows, God may see this and turn from his wrath, that we might not perish. God saw what they were doing, that they had ceased their evil behavior. So God stopped planning to destroy them, and he didn't do it. So that is the story of Jonah and his being called by God and ending up in the belly of a whale or a big fish. So what did he first do? So when God first called to Jonah, Jonah he ran away, right? He got on the ship because he was trying to run away from God, which of course is ridiculous. You can't run away from God, but that's what he was trying to do. Um, and why do you think he might not have wanted to do this job that God was asking of him? He might have been frightened. Maybe he didn't see any sense of it. Maybe he thought the Ninevites just wouldn't listen. Um, but God did not give up on Jonah. God kept trying, and he sent a great storm. But after sending the great storm, he still looked after Jonah, right? So Jonah ended up in the sea, and God sent the fish to save him from drowning. So a change took place in Jonah between when he was tossed into the water and when the whale spit him up on the shore. He became thankful and he sang praises to God, and he began to see things in a different way. Now, some people call this story, think, no, now was Jonah really inside the belly of a whale? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of people who study the Bible think that the story of Jonah is a parable, which is a short story that tells a lesson. But we can certainly see what this story is teaching us, right? Jonah didn't want to be a prophet, but he finally gave God's word to the people of Nineveh, and they listened and they turned from their sins. Jonah was successful in delivering his message. So, and really, it's a story is more about Jonah, right? It's not so much about fish. It's a story about someone who ran away from God, but God did not give up on him. God called again, and God helped Jonah to understand. So, what was it that God was calling Jonah to see or learn? And this is that the job that God had called him to do was not as hard as he thought it would be, and that God's love for all his people God's love is for all people, including those who sometimes we think of as enemies. And Jonah didn't really like the Ninevites. So if we are like Jonah and say, that's too hard, do you think God gives up on us? Oh, of course not. God will keep on calling and gives us many attempts. So, if you struggle with something, if you're trying to set out to do something good and you don't succeed the first time, it feels hard, you might feel tempted to give up, but you shouldn't give up on yourself, just like God doesn't give up on us. And so we should give ourselves many chances, because sometimes you aren't going to always have success when you first try to do something. And sometimes you need to be easy on yourself and give yourself more chances, just like God does. So God challenges us to be responsible to ourselves and to others, and to do what is right. And as we talked about last week, to use our gifts, our unique individual skills to benefit all of humanity. So this coming week, between this lesson and the next, I want you to think about what your own, like we talked about a little bit last week, what your own calling is, your own skills that you have to offer to all of humanity that can be a benefit to others. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be any one thing. You could have many callings, and it might be big, it might be small. Just think about ways that the individual you, the person who you are, how your individual self could help benefit the larger community and the larger world around us. So until next week, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others. I'll see you next time.